A fun evening descends into chaotic violence in a matter of 60 seconds, proving that anything can happen at any time. Being in the wrong place at the wrong time isn't the ideal situation when celebrating your birthday. On the evening of July 8th, 2005, friends gathered at the Time and Envy nightclub in Romford, England, to celebrate the 20th birthday of medical student Andrew Griffiths. Among the group was Andrew's best friend, Daniel Paulin, a 20-year-old media student from Southampton University who was a friend to all and who was known for his intelligence, wit, and laid-back nature. The group spent the evening drinking, laughing, and relishing in the festivities, but across the nightclub stood three dangerous men, looking to have a very different kind of fun, the kind that didn't involve drinking or dancing. Daniel, Andrew, and their friends partied the night away carefree, but after the fun was over and the club was closing, the nightmare began. It was approximately 2 a.m. when CCTV camera operators caught three individuals vandalizing a sign. But the three men walking towards the parking lot were more than just vandals. Each of them carried a criminal record. 19-year-old Timmy Sullivan was wanted by authorities after failing to report to police, and by his side was fellow painter and decorator 25-year-old Michael Anoka, who was serving a sentence on license for a robbery he had committed. But the biggest danger of the group was 17-year-old and father of two, Michael Lynch. Michael had been released from jail 6 months prior on bail and possessed a long list of criminal charges dating back years, including an incident of assault where he yelled racial slurs at an Asian man before pulling out a gun and shooting him in the leg. The cameraman followed them closely, hoping to catch them in the act of a petty crime, but what they caught was much worse than that. After the club closed for the night, Daniel called his younger sister Kirsty to give him and Andrew a ride home. While waiting for her in a deserted parking lot, Andrew and Daniel sat against the bike racks, chatting and laughing about summer vacation and reliving the liveliest parts of their evening. Then three men approached, also laughing and joking amongst themselves, seemingly just strangers enjoying the late night. Andrew and Daniel sensed no threat from the fellow clubgoers as they passed until Timmy broke away from the group and 40 seconds of brutal violence began. Unprovoked, Timmy punches Andrew across the face and Daniel reacts, lifting an arm to protect his friend, but he's not fast enough. The blow lands on Andrew's right side, the force hitting him so hard it breaks his jaw and he collapses to the ground. Michael Lynch comes running, joining the chaos, punching Daniel in the head. Anoka and Michael both converge on Daniel when suddenly Michael pulls something from his pocket, deadlier than any fist, and Daniel sees a knife glinting in his attacker's hand. Fearing for his life, he puts his hands up in a gesture of surrender, backing away while Anoka attempts to pull a cell phone from Andrew's hand. Then, just out of the camera's sight, Michael lunges at Daniel with the blade, stabbing him once. Daniel clutches his chest with his right hand, still in disbelief and shock as the pain sets in. He sustained a small wound from the blow, a mere 2 inches deep, but the knife had found its mark and sliced right into his heart. But Michael Lynch was hardly through inflicting pain on his chosen, blameless victims. Michael rushes over, knife still in hand, and as Anoka bashes his fist against Andrew's head, Michael stabs Daniel twice in the chest and then twice in the back, and Andrew finally collapses in a heap on the ground. Anoka and Michael turn to leave when Anoka notices Daniel, now bleeding profusely, is still on his feet walking towards Andrew. Anoka chases Daniel away, threatening more violence before fleeing to the escape vehicle. Andrew lay on the ground, confused, in pain, yet still conscious and aware he had been stabbed. He watched his 3 attackers get into the car and remembers the driver pausing to watch him to make sure he wasn't going to get up again before they sped away into the night. Just 40 seconds had passed from when the violence all started, and shock and terror hung heavily in the air, but the nightmare was far from over. A separate CCTV camera shows Daniel finally succumbing to his wound and crumbling to the ground. Andrew rises as his friend falls, holding on to his last shred of consciousness, searching for Daniel, not even yet realizing the extent of his injuries until he looks down. Blood pours all over the front of his shirt, and he begins to feel the searing pain in his chest. Then he sees the 2 gashes and realizes he's been stabbed. Andrew heads back to the club for help, where he is transported in an ambulance to a nearby hospital. Daniel lies on the ground, alone, until his sister Kirsty pulls up with her friend and spots her brother on the ground in a pool of blood. She frantically rushes to his side while her friend calls an ambulance. Kirsty tried everything she could to stop the bleeding, but it wasn't enough. The paramedics arrived and hastily rushed Daniel to the hospital. Andrew was lying in an emergency room bed when he started hearing a commotion at the bed next to his. Then the horrific realization washed over him. The person next to him was dying, and a sickening feeling told him it was Daniel. He shouted at the doctors, demanding to know if it was his friend, all while listening to the sounds of a flatline on the heart rate monitor. Daniel would never regain consciousness and died from his injuries next to his best friend in the hospital, leaving his family and any hopes of a bright future behind. While Daniel died, surrounded by family and doctors in the hospital, police worked hard to catch his killers. When Michael, Anoka, and Timmy took off in their car, they seemed blissfully unaware that CCTV camera operators had not only filmed the entire incident, but had a clear snapshot of the license plate as they made their getaway. It wasn't long until police tracked the number to Michael's home, where they swarmed the residence. Anoka and Timmy were apprehended at the house, but Michael managed to evade police for 3 days before being captured. In court, an official motive was never established, and the attack seemed random, but Daniel's mother, Josie Pollan, believes that the men felt it was their human right to attack both Andrew and Daniel for their own twisted evening entertainment. Judge Shirley Anwill presided over the case and had harsh words for the delinquents, saying that it was a coordinated, calculated attack as brutal as it was senseless, and that neither Andrew nor Daniel had done anything to bring such violence upon themselves. Since Timmy and Anoka were not the main assailants, both men were charged with indeterminate sentences with a minimum of 5 years served before parole for causing grievous bodily harm and wounding with intent. As for Michael Lynch, instead of serving the minimum 24 years for murder, Judge Anwill reduced his sentence to a mere 15 years behind bars, citing his lower IQ, a long list of personal problems, and the remorse he showed during the trial for his actions against 2 innocent men. But the pain caused that night can only be matched by the suffering and grief felt by Daniel's family. After hearing the convictions and the sentences, both Daniel's parents were disheartened by the court's decision, claiming it favored the criminal's well-being over the victim's outcome, which in this case was losing her only son. The grieving family left the courtroom with heavy hearts, but decided to release the full CCTV footage of Daniel's death to the public to show that anyone could quickly become the victim of senseless violence. A year following Daniel's death, Josie Pollan paid respects to her son on what would have been his 21st birthday. The same year he was expected to graduate, but because of the heinous acts of 3 men, Daniel would never have the opportunity to see any of his endeavors through or have another birthday celebration of his own. That's all for this episode, but keep the lights off and fire up another one of my videos. I recommend my newest episode of Anatomy of Murder, where we discuss the chilling case of the killer lobster boy, Grady Stiles. You can press on screen now or below this video to watch. Also, be sure to subscribe to my channel now, because you won't want to miss the next episode. And I'll see you next Wednesday.